Welcome back to a brand new episode on the Founder StorieZ podcast. Today, I am super honored and excited to interview a very dear friend. He's built an amazing company and had the opportunity to take the company from 0 to 1 to get acquired. Our guest today is our dear friend, Dor Fledel, CEO and co-founder of Spera, which was acquired by Okta. Now, instead of getting into any type of formal introduction and telling you about Dor and his company, I am just going to allow you to hear from Dor himself. So right before we jump into this episode, I highly advise you to sit tight. And if you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes, listen or watch through the whole entire thing. Because I have no doubt that if you listen to the end, you are going to get so much insight from Dor, and you're going to be able to benefit from his wisdom the same way that I did. So thank you so much for joining us, and please enjoy this podcast with Dor. Dor, my friend, your story is a super interesting story, and there's in many ways we're going to take this. But I want to start off with, what were some of the things that you believe from your childhood that your parents instilled in you, certain values, frameworks, ways of thinking that you really believe made a benefit for your adult life, your founder life, that in retrospect, you look back now and like, okay, I can see the benefits of that now. But like, obviously when it was happening when you're a little kid, you're like, why the hell am I doing this?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm excited to be here and thanks for hosting. I think, when I look at it and when I'm trying to distill what in my childhood really affected me, I think one thing that I'm really proud of, or how I operate today, is always striving for more, always trying to get excellence. How can we do more? So on and so forth. And when I look back, I think a lot of it goes back to a good balance about being the last person in the group, the worst in something, kind of in Hebrew, we call it a tail to the lions. That's the direct translation, and stuff where I was the leader. And I would actually like to focus on the losses and the tail to the lions. So, I'm sitting here, I'm 5'9" on a good day, 177 in centimeters. And growing up, I played a lot of tennis. I can talk all day long why I think tennis is the most interesting sport. First of all, it's individual. You have breaks between points, which makes it very mental. The physical aspect is pretty challenging. How the sets, how the game is built, in my opinion, has a lot of impact on the people who are playing it. Tennis players are really genius people. And I was part of a pretty competitive group. I was never good enough to make it to the national contest in Israel, which is around 30 athletes. And I was always on the verge. And how it actually looked was that I was training 9 times a week. Wow. And I was always losing. I was the last one in, my team members were winning, got to national competitions, those kinds of things. Some of them considered some even more competitive career. And I was always on the verge. And I think that not giving up at this point, especially as a boy growing up, I grew my 5'9" around 17 years. Some of my team members were 6'2", 6'3" when we were 14, 15. And today, Djokovic, Federer, they're 6'1", 6'2", but there is a certain point where you're 6'5" or something, and that it really helps your serve. And that really helps in men's tennis. So I really felt how really pushing, always going forward more and more was a big part of it. And what I really appreciated about how my parents played in this setting was that they were helping but passive. I think that, and now we're both recent fathers. I think there is a question of how much do you push someone versus how much their intrinsic motivation pushes them. I'm a very big believer in intrinsic motivation. Even how we recruit today in Okta and Spera is about it. Like, we want people who are very hungry, who want to succeed, who want to like make an impact. Right. And I think that I really appreciated how, and it's not for everyone, kind of like my parents, every Saturday, they drove me wherever we needed, Kfar Shmariyahu, Alfei Menashe, all those places that are like an hour out. But it was never their goal. Like, it was always my goal. Another interesting example I have for that is I was doing competitive debating. Like, it's something that nerds do in high school. And as you might hear, I'm not a like native English speaker. And this debating happens in English, and how much articulated or elaborated and, you know, how you can phrase your statements actually make a pretty material impact on are you persuading or not. It's not only about what you know, what you don't know. And I'm very proud to be that I was the only non-English speaker in the group. I did feel a glass ceiling, like, to be honest. I did feel like I can't get to like the levels where my friends were flying to Qatar and those kinds of things even before it was popular. And I think it's like a very similar example to the tennis practices, where I felt like this nature of trying to be the best in something, whether it works or not, and being very persistent about it, even though you're losing, is something that really helped me both in the startup, but also in other things.
Interesting. What was your home in general a competitive home, like between your siblings and did your parents, like you mentioned your parents didn't instill in you that like there's more of intrinsic motivation versus like you have to do this, you have to do that. But, you know, that still comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that in our home, it's less about competitiveness. I have a very big gap between the siblings. Like, my older sister is 17 years older than me. I'm closer to her daughter in age rather than her. We're in a very good relationship, all of us. And I think that it was more so a culture of striving for the best. For example, my parents, they moved to the US for my father's PhD, and it was sort of the first time they left Israel. Like, was to get here to somewhere they don't know, and really trying to push the boundaries of, like, he back then was in aerodynamics, physics, and stuff that weren't as evolved in Israel back in the 80s, and really pushing the envelope was a pretty big material. I wouldn't say that I felt it within the family as much. I think the gap helps, but yeah.
Right. So then how does a 14-year-old boy that's always on the verge of like getting to the next level within tennis, and you mentioned debating also, where all your friends are flying to all the other countries to debate, but you never made it. How does a 14-year-old boy go ahead and constantly push himself to keep on going? And he sees himself not making it. You know, you see yourself not getting into the team on both levels, in debate and the tennis. How do you keep on going? I know if I was a 14-year-old boy, I probably would have given up. I probably would have given, for sure. It's like,
yeah, I think it's. I never thought about it, but I think it's two things. First of all, I really love competing. Like even if we'll head out this door, I'll feel like it's a competition who gets there first. Like that. That's just me. Yeah, I'm a competitor by heart. When we play. Even when I play with my nephews and nieces, you know, some of them are like 5-year-olds, and we play basketball. Like, I can't lose. Like, I just can't help it. It's bigger than me. I can't wait for
you to start playing with your daughter, and you see.
I'll know how it feels. So there's a natural competitiveness where I just love competing on stuff. I think there is another thing here, which is also a material part, is the group. Both in the tennis, in debate, later in Talpiot, which was a really interesting challenge to go through 8200 and some stuff there as a person who came without a very deep cyber expertise back then. I think it's what really motivates me also is the group. Like, right. I really enjoy being part of a very a group that strives for excellence in a way, and both the tennis, debate, other stuff, I really felt like, those were my best friends. And although we competed and there was some shared resources we competed for, it was always like, how can we be better? How can we help each other? How can you kind of like support your teammates?
Right.
And that was pretty material for me.
Wow. As I think about it, tennis and debating are two great things to really set someone up for founder success. Whereas debating, one is you have to get your point across. So you have to really be able to communicate. It could be anything from the marketing, the product, the team, get your point across to the whole entire team. And from the tennis side, like you mentioned, it's a lonely sport. Right? You're the only person on the court. It's not like baseball, basketball, soccer where you have a whole team. It's literally just you. And you're constantly fighting with yourself internally and mentally. I think, I'm probably going to pronounce his name wrong, but Alcaraz, right? And he spoke about this recently, he's saying how he's just every, even though he's probably the best now, but every single time he's on the court, he just internally is having that fight with himself.
Yeah.
And that internal fight as a founder, as a human being, is the biggest war that's happening.
Yeah. I fully agree. I think that the more, like, the way I at least viewed it is that, there are the top 10% of founders. What have they done? How can I be as close as possible to how they perform, how they acted? And I looked at it pretty like in a cold way, like it's a competition, and I need to get to top 10%, and top 10% of cybersecurity Israel, like sort of what I compared myself to, and that was how I acted.
So who do you measure yourself to now? Because now you're in a more of a corporate company. It's not a startup. What's your competition?
Yeah, I think first of all, I want to say that I think it's more like how I'm motivated and who pushes me, and not who I want to beat in like us versus they a kind of setting. I think that sometimes startups, corporates, every group that we're part of can very easily kind of like dwell into like some competition. In Okta, I don't feel that way in a good way. I think I have a very impressive peer group today in Okta, where they're making like I'm leading product management for both Spera, which is today ISPM, and Okta's PAM product, which is a different fit. We can talk about it, but I think that my peer group today is pretty impressive. Like, I would say they've done material things before they got into Okta, and they've been in Okta and done material things in Okta. And I feel like I'm learning a lot about how to handle my new role and what my new job is, which is pretty different than what I used to do. And so both them and my boss are pretty like figures I look up to like, this is what good looks like. And that's like, how can I even be better than that? Yeah.
Interesting. So we're going to jump a few places now, but we're going to start off with, I wanted to take me to the day you sold the company. What was the emotions and the feelings like on that day?
Yeah. I think it was a pretty interesting mix of a lot of excitement for what's coming up. And I'll share more in a second. And the second thing was a very big relief. The way it actually looks with selling a company is obviously you have some people have a lot of great options. There are like many things. You can raise more money, you can continue, you can sell, you can do whatever you want. But from the point that you made the decision to sell to Okta or whatnot, it just takes a lot of capacity. Like just the process, legal processes, a lot of stuff that are obviously for the good of the business, but not directly what we've done prior with growing more revenue. Like actually the process of M&A in a way kind of like takes down revenue from the company, it takes focus on so on. There are some decisions that you are kind of like at a certain point where the certainty is pretty high. Some decisions need to be made otherwise. For example, about hiring. Do you want to hire people who are signing up for one thing and give them another thing like a week after? Like there is a certain kind of commitment to people and also to customers. Right. And the main thing and the process takes like 3 to 6 months, or 1 to 6 months, depends on the size of the company. With some public companies, just the like legal approval and the antitrust takes 6 months. So in our case, it took end to end around 6 months. And the main thing that it actually caused me to feel was relief, was because we took some risks on the business. I really believe that it was all for the good now as it happened, but just the relief that the risks that we've taken have paid off, and that we're now going to go forward in our new world with Okta, versus if the deal would have fallen, then you took the risks and now you're accountable for what's happening there. Yeah.
Right. During that 6 month period, was it like a secret that you're being acquired? Like that?
Yeah. For 3 months of the 6, it was a secret. Yeah.
Right. So it was hard.
Yeah. You're going through it. There is a very limited like sharing stuff. I think that like as a founder, there are stuff that you're able to share with your employees who, you're neck to neck 3 a.m. and there are stuff you just can't share. I think that just like the way, if it falls like, about everything in the company, even a big deal that you're about to sign, a lot of those things, just people take it differently. Yeah. And having the macro view of like those things happen. There are some acquisition offers that fall, or some that happen. It's stuff that just I found founders to balance better because they also have no other way. Right. And keeping it as a secret wasn't easy, especially with the commitment to the team. But I think everyone like accepted it, which is like, yeah.
So I have to ask you, why did you choose to sell? Because you were on a great path. Spera was doing very, very well. Like, why did you take that? Do you feel like, why did you choose to sell? And B, do you feel like you missed out the opportunity maybe to build a bigger company with Spera?
Yeah. Let's talk on the why. I know when we thought about those things back then, it was just after October 7th, by the way, just for the context. Right. And we had 3 primary reasons, Ariel, my co-founder, and I, that made us excited to join Okta. And obviously there were other great options in place. Usually those things are accelerating other stuff as well. The main things we saw, three things that excited us. First of all, the outcome for the employees, for us, taxes for Israel, always good. But the outcome came to like a material amount that would help 25 people that we really care about. The second thing was actually about the transition that we're going to help in Okta. So Okta, to give you a bit of a background, some people just view it as a security company, but if you actually look at the DNA is of an IT company because the identity landscape was really associated with IT for a very long time. Part of Spera's innovation was to actually pinpoint that today, it's not an IT game anymore. It's a shared game between IT and security, and the security persona is underserved, and they just have no way to fulfill what they need to do. So Okta is doing, and there are 2 main leaders in identity, Microsoft and Okta, is understood it and wanted to do a very big shift towards security because the buyer changed. Like, for example, they just came to our state for the first time, so on and so forth. And what really got us excited was 2 additional things. First of all, helping Okta make this transition, like seeing and being like, we're not the only solution. There are multiple additional products, hiring, like it's a 50-prong kind of like approach here, solution, but being a material part of helping a public company that's leading the identity field and how much value it would bring to the cybersecurity community. So helping fortify the identity attack surface.
Mm-hmm.
We just believe that if we're successful and we can help Okta be a security company, then we're actually advancing the entire, since it's such a big, like, two players game, we can actually help a material amount of customers and a material part of the world. And we're now seeing a lot of it by our reach to customers, the impact, like it's unmatchable to what a startup would have. And the last thing that we had in mind was the Israeli part of it. So as Okta is going into security, it was after October 7th, like we actually signed and announced the deal a month after, slightly more. And Okta's strategy to go into security also has a very big anchor in Israel. Like Okta sees the great talent that Israel has in cybersecurity, and actually acknowledges and wants to double down on Israel as a way to fortify and solidify cybersecurity talent that would accelerate it to its outcomes.
Right.
Since we were acquired, we more than doubled the site.
Wow.
Okta's looking in a year. Okta's looking into a more like expansion in Israel in various ways, and we're excited to lead and be part of it. Like Ariel, my co-founder, I hope you'll get to interview him as well. He's leading the manager of the Israeli side and the Israeli happening, and we feel like we get a very material spot in the company due to those three reasons.
Interesting. So those were the considerations you were thinking about as you were selling the company.
Yeah.
Were you afraid? I guess not afraid. Like, as October 7th happened, like, I'm almost surprised that Okta didn't back out.
Yeah. We saw it in I think actions speak louder than words.
Right.
And what I really appreciate about Okta is that the senior leadership has a very set strategy, and they're not letting kind of like small, they're not letting noise change it. And if the strategy is to go to cybersecurity and Israel is a primary part of cybersecurity, then one thing or another wouldn't change it. And that's something I really appreciated, like how they look at like the foundations, first principle, like Israel is going to be big in cybersecurity in the next 2 decades. Yes or no? Yes. So let's do it. Like, and obviously such a tragedy, and especially how it looks in the US, like it just looks different. Wasn't like a reason to back out, which impressed us a lot. Yeah.
Wow.
At first I thought that they would back out, like, and I would understand, like, yeah.
Did you have a backup plan?
Continue with the business. We're excited. Things were going very well. Right. Like the customers wanted what we had, and we had a very good solution. So yeah.
What do you tell other founders that are, let's say, are considering an acquisition offer? Like, what framework do you think they should approach it from and think about it?
In my mind, the main thing to look at is what are you trying to accomplish? Right. What does success look for you? And trying to really, I think in general, that's how I address complicated questions. Dumb it down to 1 or 2 questions, one or two principles. Because, I can share that now whenever when I talk to fellow founders, one of the jokes that we're telling is how much friction we're getting for asking for PTO. Like in a startup, you just kind of like Slack someone, put it on the calendar or whatnot.
Yeah.
Here, just in corporate environments, there is a system. You need to go into the system in advance. Not kidding. The entire thing costed me in the last 18 months since we joined Okta 18 months ago, something like 10 minutes. Okay. But I think it's a very emotional thing. So the point being is there are going to be a lot of small things that are going to come. There are a lot of like stuff that are very different. And the question is, what do you care about? What are the top 2 principles? What are you trying to optimize? I know some founders who are trying to optimize for financial outcome. I know some founders who are trying to optimize for the prestige of the acquirer. I know founders who are trying to optimize that, it's been 10 years and they just want an out. And I know founders who are believing that this is the best they're going to get, and now is a good time, and it's better than a competitor being acquired. I know. So I think there is a lot of why do you want to do it, and really boiling it down with your co-founder to make sure that like it's the right decision. In our case, we want to make sure that the outcome for us, like we want to make sure that the outcome is good for the employees in a material way. And we wanted to make sure that we're excited about the integration is going to look like. Later it looked like Israel, like security, like those kinds of things. But we wanted to be acquired for something that excites us, and not just, since we're acquired, I'm finding a lot of bad reasons to be acquired from friends and colleagues. Sometimes it's like a political game of like someone just needed enough headcount to be promoted in a corporate. Someone wanted the prestige. Someone wanted like competing resources with other teams. Someone didn't really understand what they're buying. Like there are many great reasons not to be acquired or bad reasons to be acquired. We're very lucky that we got there for the right reasons. I think that usually you can see by success or failure later where you acquired for the right reasons or not. And I think that it's a very interesting part that could be leveraged by the teams. And that's why it was part of our consideration set.
Right. You mentioned something interesting right now that, when you're speaking to the founder, when they're having this consideration, you try to dumb it down to 1 to 2 questions and let's say, what's your principles? So I'm wondering if you have that same framework for your personal life.
Yeah, always. Like that's, I think I'm trying to simplify a lot of things in life. You can think about, where are you going for a vacation? Are you living? My wife and I lived in the last 5 years in 5 different cities.
Wow.
And we moved and it was always like a very easy move. I think because there's always a question of how do you optimize for 5,000 variables, but actually what moves me is like 1 or 2 things that actually move the needle, and the rest is like, so I'll just give you an example. We lived in California. My wife and I lived in California. We came here to the US, did our grad school, master's degrees in Chicago. And then we moved to California for her job. And building a startup from California, her job was in person. She's in robotics, which is pretty much you need to be with the robot. Yeah. And California was tough for me as a founder. So it was the first days of the company. Unlike most Israeli founders who start their business in Israel, I actually started it here in the US, which in my opinion, as a side note, requires a lot of trust in the founding team and first employees, co-founder. But if it goes well, it's like a game changer because of the access and reach to customers that I really believe in. And then just like California was tough. Like every day I started 5 a.m. We didn't have like leadership back then. It was like all flat. And I started at 5 a.m. every morning, which is 3 p.m. Israel. And it feels like the day went by. You're kind of waking up to something that's like almost done. I think it's pretty typical for people who move to California from Israel. I think that it was just more interesting because it's a startup that was just founded. So there is no like processes, no leadership, no managers. And the second thing is that today, I think that most people are doing it from the East Coast. Now in 2025, I think the East Coast became slightly more popular. And those 3 hours matter more than I personally expected. So we moved. I started every day at 5 a.m., like 5 a.m. every morning, not kind of like an alarm clock for 5 a.m., like 5 a.m. logging on. And both from a work life, like I virtually just like worked and slept. That's what we had, and our social life back there, we had like a decent social life, but when you live in the suburbs of San Francisco, like I think it's a great place if you have kids, a tech job that you don't care about, and don't work with Israel. And I had neither of those three. And then, my wife and I started openly speaking about moving here to New York, and we tried dumbing it down again to like, where would our social life be better, and how much would it impact our relationship, what we're doing, and the business. And obviously she took a hit for her career. We're now kind of like, she got back from there, but it was just not optimal for her, I would say. And I think that, there are 5,000 things you can ask yourself with such a move. What about the nature? What about like so many other things that we love there, and potentially floor kind of like apartment sizes? Like there are so many things you can compare, but I like personally to really dumb it down to one or two things, and then going with the most impactful stuff. Yeah.
Interesting. What would be some other examples that you're able to bring out that point more of like dumbing it down to, let's say, first principles, or just to make it super simple when you have a tough decision to make?
I think coming here to the US for school. So as part of, I served for 11 years. I was 28 back at the time. My wife and I thought that we want to do something with high variance, like something out of the ordinary, but something that accelerates our future lives and brings some spice. And we both got accepted to very good programs here in the US, specifically in Chicago, and in stuff that we wanted. And in the US, a bit unlike Israel, like the geographic constraint, you can be like 3 time zones away from your spouse, and that doesn't really help. So we had a very good setup, and I think that you can analyze whether such a move is good or bad in so many different ways. And in hindsight, like, it was so different than what I expected, not for good or bad. It was just like, I think that predictability in some cases is just so low. Like I've only seen the military. I've always lived in Israel. And I've always met like a certain types of people in my life, and then actually trying to extrapolate whether moving to the US, is it better for those qualities that you're going to build? Is it better for the career path you're going to choose, which I didn't know back in the time. I knew I always wanted to found a startup. I just didn't know it's going to be upon graduation. Was really something that pushed us as a couple to choose based on kind of like first principles, like, is it, and back then we asked, like, are we excited about it? Like, is it going to bring like interesting stuff? And is it going to give us a new edge that we didn't have in otherwise, versus our alternative lives of staying in Israel? Then it was an easy decision.
Wow. Was Spera the first thing you did out after you went to the Army, college, and was Spera technically your first job?
No. I also worked besides the military, which was like a long serve. I was there for a totally 11 years. I also worked at a time at Google, and also in venture capital myself. I saw some interesting things, but they really only fortified how much I want to do it. Yeah.
How did you know Ariel was the right co-founder for you?
Yeah, so Ariel and I know each other from the military. I used to be his boss, and we used to be peers, and we stayed in touch since. I think that choosing a co-founder, I treated it very heavily. Like, I think, Ariel and Yael, my wife, are the two closest people I have in the world at this point. I personally think you need to find, and what resonated with Ariel is that I found that we have a lot of very common beliefs about culture, about what's important for us, what are we enjoying, what's what makes us happy. And on the flip side, I also found that we have interesting enough disagreements so that we're not two people who just kind of like echoing each other and a mirror of each other. And I can share like an interesting example in a second. And the last thing that I really liked about him, maybe back to how we started this conversation, is that he was just an A player. Like he was, whatever he was doing to the excellence. Impressed me in a lot of stuff where I just thought like, I wish I could have done the same thing. It turns out he also played tennis growing up, but that was only in hindsight we learned. We've never played together. I don't think we're open to that at this point of our relationship. But that was how we bonded for this journey. I would say that one of the interesting things I saw later is that we haven't worked with each other for 3 years before we founded Spera, and I found that he grew in so many different levels between the time that we last worked together until we started the company. So he kind of kept only encouraging me and reinforcing the reasons we founded the company together.
Wow. So you mentioned that you had different. Well, I guess we phrase like this: how did you and Rio handle disagreements? Because both you're super competitive, both you're super smart, both you, and it's by nature. Co-founders, you get into fights and disagreements. How did you guys handle it?
I think that it's all about maybe to the debate analogy. I think the biggest way to win a debate is to listen. Okay. I didn't feel like I was competing with him, but I think it's a lot about listening and untangling the why. Like I think as people, like we need to ask. We benefit from asking more why, and sometimes the seventh why is an underlying reason that actually can solve everything. Yeah. So I think how we handled our conflicts and what helped us was really getting to the bottom of it, of very open communication and a lot of trust. I think we've known each other before we started Spera. We've known each other for 7-8 years at this point. So trust is very easy to kind of like assume at this point. Right. And a lot on the why and kind of like basing it, going very logical, very first principles on stuff. I can share an example if
please. Yeah.
So there is something an example I'm really passionate about that also comes up as I speak to founders. I'll give a bit of an intro, but very often I speak to founders who what they're actually saying in a weird way, they're handling the biggest ambiguity level that they ever felt in their life. Mm-hmm. I think that if you work in a company for someone or whatnot, even their employees, the level of ambiguity is bounded. Like you can decide pretty material things. You have a lot of impact, but the span of decisions you can make is just more limited to what's rational. Mm-hmm. And as a founder, you can take very, very different decisions that are going to impact materially the future of the company. An example that I'm hearing founders and is a lot about mini pivots in the company that are actually super material. Because technology is early stage cybersecurity technology is pretty transferable. Like when you're building with a certain technology, like Spera could have pivoted between 4 different categories, 4 different domains in a pretty like good way, even a year in. Mm-hmm. And the founders, mostly what I'm hearing them say is, I think we're good. I'm trying to optimize for best. We have this kind of market we can attack, for example, in vulnerability management, and we can also attack a different market in exposure management. And we have sort of the same use cases. There's also overlap on the use cases. But if we're going to build vulnerability management tool, we need to really double down on 50 different features that are very specific for that world and that persona. And on the flip side, if we're in exposure management, it's a different persona, a different kind of set. And maybe today the things are pretty similar. Now it's a divergence point. And that's why we need to make a decision. And we had the same thing. About 6 months in, specifically in identity, there is a pretty big split between security forward products, products that actually, their sole intent is to stop the breach, and products that are about operational efficiency of, for example, onboarding, offboarding, and helping to meet some compliance regulations. In an ideal world, security and compliance go hand by hand. In reality, in identity today, it's not the case. And what happened there about 6 months in, a company you all know, a Fortune 500 company, they gave us a pretty material verbal claim about an open budget they have about the compliance problem, that we had good connections and they wanted us to go solve it. The main issue was that our actual, and I was for, as the CEO, always selling. We have, that's customer traction we're getting. And Ariel was against back then. And when we really boiled it down together, it came down to what kind of a company do we want to build and actually can excel in building. And
I'm going to stop you one question. I just want to insight. When you say what type of company you want to build, are you referring to product or culture?
Both, but focused on the product more so. And Ariel was very open and transparent that his passion, and not only he was also talking on behalf of the employees and also on behalf of myself, to be honest, that his passion is about building a security product, and a product that comes and could help, tomorrow morning to stop. And what we're doing with customers is incredible and really saving people's jobs and careers. And that was Ariel's stand. And he also added that that's what we can excel in. And on the flip side, his take was that the compliance aspect of things was something that just not really our background. Like, our background is hacking stuff. And the person who was going to win this market used to be an audit, used to be like someone who worked in much more like process-driven environment. So that was like a huge dilemma. That was his claim. I started with objection, obviously. But in hindsight, it took us a few days of really wrapping our heads around it. But we took the decision of going with the security company. What it actually led to us, and we came out of stealth pretty soon after with our messaging. We were the first identity security posture company in the market. Back then, Gartner defined it. Gartner did a mishmash that doesn't really fit what we believe in and what we believe in what customers say and what customers said. And we were pretty bullish on going against the current with not what Gartner is saying. We're doing what we, and actually as a founder, saying what we actually do, which is hardcore security posture management for identity, the number one attack surface out there. And I think that this disagreement and how we sorted it out really led the future of the company, because I know that the company and the people we needed to recruit, the kind of tasks and jobs we would have solved for the customers would have been like day and night between those two alternatives.
So you mentioned 2 points. From that story, I get 2 points, and I think 2 separate topics I want to touch upon. One is, at what point do you listen to a customer like that? Because many founders are presented with that dilemma where, let's say, a Fortune 500, Fortune 100 would come to them and say, hey, by the way, we have a budget for XYZ. a startup company doesn't do XYZ, but it's adjacent to XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
And for a founder, it's very easy to start thinking about like, wait, maybe we should go down that dilemma. So I guess you could also tie that into, which I hope you touch upon, customer feedback from there.
Yeah.
That's one context. And the other context we'll jump to afterwards is at what point should a founder know to trust their gut feeling or not? Because your gut feeling was telling you, wait, this might be the right thing to do, to go down this process of compliance. And Ariel's gut feeling was, no, that's not the right way to go. So I guess it's two separate things. Let's touch upon the first aspect of a founder's approached by a Fortune 100 company, a $500,000 budget towards adjacent product to the startup. Should they go ahead and do it or not?
Yeah. Let's start with that one. Sounds good.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think that, it goes back to our both responsibility and ability as leaders in a company. I don't think it's only for founders, but I really feel like trusting the gut. Some quote dilemmas are data driven, and that's great.
Right.
As the ambiguity grows, and I think that startup companies just embody like a very high level of ambiguity, I think there is a very strong reason to just go with the guts. I read some books that are also saying that we retrofit the data to fit what our gut tells us, but that's, the sarcastic nature of myself. But I feel like at a certain level of ambiguity, especially that founders, big decisions, even life decisions, can you trust this person to live with you for the rest of your life? Yes or no? Like the ambiguity is so high that you just have to trust your gut and to really understand that there is a reason why you're in the seat. Like actually being a founder is hard. And the reason why someone succeeds and someone doesn't is because they have the wrong gut instincts. And there was no logical sign in the right door and the wrong door, the green or the red. It was more like decisions that they had to make based on impartial data that they got from the team, from customers. And I think that founders, sometimes as I speak to them, are trying to find kind of like a good reasoning, but the reasoning is actually the 200 customers that you spoke with, and maybe 10 of them said something that's relevant, but that's how you as an individual who wants to excel, that's how you collect this feedback, because no one actually knows the business. One of the best advice I got from one of my best mentors very early on, as he was talking to me about advices I'm going to get, is that no one knows the business better than me. Yeah. No one knows what's best for Spera better than us as a founding team. And people have opinions, people have advices, but only you can make, the probability is that you'll make the right decision. And you didn't get here by making wrong decisions throughout your life. So trust your guts and go with it. Yeah. And I feel like many times, at least what I'm seeing now, is that sometimes founders fall into some paralysis or will choose later. I think an example of it is going out of stealth late. I think there's all this entire discussion of when do you go out of stealth. But I think a pro of going out of stealth relatively early is putting yourself out there for feedback. I just heard Sam Altman kind of give a very inspiring talk about it, where he's really encouraging to just put everything you've got on the table to get the feedback, and trust yourself that even if someone would just see and read your entire manifest of what you're going to do, you're going to outbid them. Right. And that your moat is so material as an individual, as what you've started with the IP you've got, so many ways to create a moat, that you just need to trust yourself, because otherwise if it's so easy to steal, people would have done it anyhow.
Yeah. I think that's actually a real challenge or question for Israeli startups, specifically in cyber, where people stay in stealth for way too long. There
was a precedent of a company acquired in stealth, and people are trying to drawing the line around one point. Yeah.
Do you have an example of following your gut feeling?
Yeah, I think that example was really strong. I have another example of something that's like rooted in the culture of me and what we're doing in Spera and how we recruit people. One of our motives with 4 values, and one of them was be the expert, empower the customer. That's our role. Our role is to help them fulfill their job, and we're going to do it through our expertise. That's our day to day. Most practitioners are not dealing with that all day long. And one of the ways that my gut instinct, I think there are like a lot of really different ways to build companies. And the way I found that resonates with me is through a lot of customer trust. I think there are like Israeli founders, especially in cybersecurity, they can get in the room and speak and use kind of like the pedigree of we hacked the Pentagon, kind of like we're like tech people with hoodies, black hoodies, like culture, like nothing matters. Like the email can have like typos, like it's fine, it's all good. Like we come from like that professional pedigree. What I really believe in is that the way that works for me, at least, and the people I like working with, is doing it through mutual trust and mutual belief, and through actually vulnerability and exposure. For example, I told customers, and that was the gut instinct, to go with like the culture of being open and transparent with the customers about everything. Even, you know, the name identity security posture management, that's like being open with the customer. I'm not telling you that I'm doing what Gartner tells you need. I'm doing that thing. And a very good example for that is our openness and responsiveness to them. Like I have a rule about customers that my response time will be always the shortest possible. Like sometimes it's minutes. And I'm not responding with a solution in minutes, but I'm responding like, I got you. Like this is a priority. We're dealing with it. I learned that working with Israelis, sometimes Israelis are very like cut to the chase, and they don't understand that that customers, for example, first want to be heard, and only then want to solve their problem. And I think that using this culture of like really asking customers tough questions, really being there for them when they're breached, for example, which is a very low point in our industry, and also telling them very transparently without the startup bullshit, we're doing everything, we'll solve all the problems you've got, what we're committed to, and when we're committed to it, like we're delivering it, and we'll work weekends, we'll do whatever we can, and we'll be there for you. But that's what we're doing, and what's not in there, and we can't reconcile whether it's there or not, is just not going to happen. And it led to a lot of very open discussions with customers. I have a CISO in the Midwest who I really love, who, not kidding, once a week sends me an email. I met another founder that knows you, and we have a very good relationship, although we met face to face just once for 30 minutes. That's all. But he trusts us because we've proven over time to him, to his team, that we'll be there. And it actually made him even like change his usage patterns in the company, because he really he had an issue. He solved it through us once. He really saw that we're responsive, and then it kind of like goes from there. Doing that now in Okta is a different problem to solve for, but I'm already seeing how the nature of how much we as a product are demanding from our peers in customer success, in sales, in all those places, how we help them drive the interactions with the customers. It's pretty material, and we're getting the feedback from them. Even like we're leading now Spera, and that SKU, we're today a SKU in Okta. We're leading we're the first adopters of the new customer success program in Okta, and that cost because of very good relationships of my team and people in Okta that share just this interest of like, let's be very open, very transparent with the customers, and that would pave the road.
Right. So what are some of the other mistakes you find or you see that Israeli founders make when coming to the US, selling to the US? Because you mentioned a few over there, and like you had the benefit of building the company from the US, understanding the culture much more. But someone that's sitting, in Tel Aviv, building for the US, what are the mistakes you see them make?
Yeah, I think there are like different styles.
Okay.
Having said that, now let's talk about mistakes. I think that one of our best angel investors, which I really love.
What's his name?
Shmuel Levy.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
He was very often, whenever we came to Israel, he lives in Tel Aviv, wouldn't disclose anything. And we felt like we're olim la regel to him every time. I was in Israel like every 6 weeks, and we had like an hour in his home. Very, very nice place. And it always felt like the most rewarding, like for time to value of hour in the 6 weeks we've had, because it's just like from business and business building perspective is like 5 levels above everyone I've spoken with in my life. I think what he really nurtured in us was a concept that's like, how do you buy a car? Okay, so when you go and buy a car, and let's I hope you'll answer what I'm looking for, but when you buy a car, how do you make a decision?
Well, I don't have a car, but if I had to buy a car right now, my first place would go is ChatGPT. This is my budget. This is what I'm looking for. This is for the safety features. This is how many miles I want to get from it. And then I'll see what it spits out, and then obviously go again and again and again.
Amazing. I'll probably do the same thing.
Right.
I think that there is some perception that's very common among some founders, that's very rooted in our culture, about what matters is only what's under the hood of a car. Like, we buy a car for the engine. Mm. I think that's how it's very easy to fall to this pitfall of people are going to buy my car because the engine is the best engine. I think there are some people who buy the car for the best engine. There are like a handful of them at least, but I think that's not the majority of the market. Like, at least what I believe in is that people buy cars for the packaging, like how safe it is, as you said, how aesthetic it looks, what are the colors, does it fit their colors, does it fit the pricing plan they were expecting, how many miles does it have, and also how nice was the salesperson if you were buying a new car, which I never bought, but how nice was the salesperson as you entered? Did they offer you water? Was it cool inside, or were you sitting outside in 40 degrees in Tel Aviv? And I think he really made us focus also not on the value that we provide, but can people who are not like very like direct and very punctuate in their habits, can they consume it? Is it aesthetic for them? Are they and is it suited to fit real people who want to solve their tasks, or can it fit people and solve their tasks? Yeah.
Interesting. When it comes to, we talk about, you spoke about angel investor. When it comes to angel investing or angel investors, how should founders approach it? Because I see 2 different approaches, where first-time founders want name brands essentially as angel investors, versus second-time founders usually just put in their friends. They don't care who it is. They're like, hey, you're my friend, come in, put in a $100,000 check. How should first-time founders think about the angel investors to maximize the most value for them?
Yeah. I'll tell you how we've done it.
Yeah.
I think few different things. First of all, is a group composition. I feel the way I see it is a bit like you're collecting your basketball team. Like you need a bit of everything. Like it's fine to have brand recognition. We had like pretty material people on our angel investors list. They would be the least accessible to probably.
Right.
But brand is important. Like again, people buy cars because BMW is better than Subaru. Like it's fine. So having the right balance between people who are and asking yourself, what are you getting from them? You have brand, you have potential connections, and you have people who are. Had the joy, for example, Shmil, other people who are actually accelerating the business by advice they're giving us. And the last thing is money. Like that's also
right.
part of the thing. I think that the interesting thing, and it really varies per group and per team, is what's the collection of people you want. I think in general, the other thing that I sometimes see is that people have a lot of high hopes of angels, and I took a lot from some of the angels, but in the end, they're gonna provide an advice. Okay, like they don't know the business as well as you do, and I think the more you approach it as which is a tip by one of our angels, the more you approach it as they're providing me input so I can make more informed decisions.
Right.
I think that's what the right state of mind. I think the last thing for first-time founders, what I really help, kind of like the way we've done it, was that we had two very trusted advisors, people that we can open everything up with them. And that was really helpful during the funding rounds. I think that just like doing it for the second time is 10 times easier than the first time. And having, I think there is part of the team that you're assembling, there is also relation. And for example, there is a very specific set of people that I can be very open with and feel like I'm getting maximal value, and they can help me personally and not help someone theoretical or a business. And for me, those two people were like lifesavers in the funding round, because there are like pretty complicated, timely decisions you need to make very early on in your company's life. So I even try to fortify those relationships before you go raise a round, because sometimes angels are done retroactively.
Right. Yeah. How did you deal with founder loneliness?
I think I had my my wife and my co-founder to really help me. So I really remember a situation where, like, the entire thing is pretty overwhelming. Even I enjoyed it. Like I loved it. I might do it again. Like it's great. But there are the highs are highs and the lows are lows.
Yeah.
That's what I felt, and I really think that what was really unique for me and my relationship, for example, with my wife, is that. So we've been together since we're 17. We moved together through some challenges, moving to a different country. And one of the greatest things I would say about her is that when it was difficult for me, for example, founder loneliness is one of those things, she was there for me in the most distilled way of the phrase. What I felt, and I, in hindsight, as I now speak to founders, I'm not the only one who have it. But sometimes in the end of the day, you want to kind of like decompress. And I just wanted to have like complete silence. Like I didn't want to share anything. I didn't want to talk about things. I didn't want to talk about work. I didn't want to talk about stuff outside of work. I just wanted to sit in. I didn't want to do anything like and I think it requires a person who really understands that the goal is to help you and do what you think is the most valuable thing at this point, and not what they believe in, or and a certain level of acceptance. So I just had her as a sounding board to everything I had, and also my co-founder, which I believe that the founder loneliness, we openly discussed it. Sometimes we consulted with each other about our challenges, where part of the challenge is the other side. but and I think it leads to very good things. That's more on the, let's call it, talking side. Other than that, two things that really helped me in the last few years about how I'm dealing with stuff. So when we lived in California, one of the good things is being 4 hours away from ski mountain, Lake Tahoe. It's like it's a distance. It's legit. And I really remember the days we had like a car. We had rented ski equipment for the season, so like it's not a hassle in the morning of. And I really remember, like, for me also balancing like work and life, like the way to balance is not to balance and just work the entire time. And I really remember that we took a few Saturdays off where we drove there and kind of like at least on the ski mountain for like a set of hours, I felt like I could disconnect at a certain level. I felt pain for doing it. Like in the same time, I felt like I need to work on the business. There are other stuff I can accelerate. But it was my getaway. And here in New York, one of the things I really love is I really love rituals, just less decisions. And we're having a set. So we don't have a family here, but our community, our friends became our family. And I'm not a religious person, but we're doing like a Friday night dinner that's very consistent. Like we're always doing it same place, same time. And for me, that's like one of the best getaways. Like I really remember by heart the amount of dinners I missed because of work, where I had to fly somewhere, red eyes, whatnot. And that's like a very big piece that's kind of like keeping me, those rituals that kept me like handle that loneliness. Yeah.
How do you mentioned something interesting. When you're on the ski mountain, you have sometimes that guilt will enter you that you should be working now and not skiing. How do you deal with that guilt? Because I also have that guilt. Like sometimes won't be working. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to be working. I have so much to do. There's no end in sight. So how do you deal with that?
I wish I had an answer. Yeah, I think, I'm a believer that like, at least the way I view things and why I said you shouldn't balance is the way I want to build a startup is that I have a pretty strong commitment to the team and to customers. And I want that when it ends, I look at myself in the mirror and say that I left nothing on the table. Nothing on the table. That's again that nature of excellence. And when I'm looking at leaving nothing on the table, kind of like taking time off is not part of it. I settled on not working on Saturdays, and doing a bit of balance on Sunday afternoons here in the US. But it was always in my mind, like that's part of how material thing. By the way, I think it doesn't have to be a founder. Like people can be occupied by stuff, even if they're, in everything you do. And in my past, I was occupied by what I did even before I started the company. But I think that like balancing is hard. My approach is that you should not balance, and obviously there is some balance you need to meet, but I think it should be very low and go with it, because I do see the business impact. Like not kidding. Like there's someone I like who says, the harder I work, the luckier I am. Like I think that, meeting a customer at all costs, even if it's a red eye, even if it's on a Friday, even if it's after a Sunday, Monday morning. Like, people are free when it's less convenient to you. That's the that's why they're free. So that's why how I approached it.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned like people are free when it's less convenient to you. I remember I had an LP meeting once. I had a meeting for an LP, ended up being like pushed off. And he's like, you know what? The only time I can meet you is if I'm going to the airport. I'm going to the airport at this time. I said, no problem. I'll come in the taxi with you to the airport. And he was like way out of my way, out of my way. But I went with him to the taxi. I got into the taxi. I traveled to this location where he was leaving from. Went into the taxi, traveled with him to the airport, and then I had to take a 45-minute drive back. But that was what worked. And that's the hard work you have to put in.
Yeah, I think it just speaks. This example is like, and the culture that I'm part of is really like for what you just did, and I think it's a wonderful idea. You just gave me another idea, but I think it really shows that there is no other way. Yeah. Like, you must find a way. You must win this.
Yeah,
and if the cost is a taxi back, let it be. Yeah,
that's it.
It's probably traffic is jammed in the morning, but that's the cost. Yeah.
It's the only way. How do you, since you're a very competitive person, you probably, I'm going to assume, also have a lot of chatter in your head. How do you deal with chatter?
I think that like it's, I think it changes, like it varies. Sometimes I want to tune those voices down and ignore them. Sometimes I want to use them as a motivation. Sometimes you just can't help it. Like, that's the reality of it. I think that the most important thing that I'm doing about some chatter and thoughts is to really try. I'm not working from my mind, I'm working from my gut, but to really try to be as rational as possible about things, because very often chatter is coming from the gut, and trying to isolate, why am I experiencing it? What are my thoughts? Sometimes the chatter is like a wake-up call to something that data that didn't hit you yet. Right. But yeah, I think it's really about trying to make the most out of it, and also your safety nets of people that you feel comfortable sharing those kinds of things. Yeah,
right. It sounds like you have a very strong group of safety net people.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and at least one of the things my wife told me afterwards and during was that it really helped her feel like she's part of it. Like she doesn't need to understand the differences between that page in our product and another page. Like, I think what really helped our relationship is that she could empathize with what I'm trying to say and not what I'm actually saying. Yeah. And that was really helpful. Yeah.
I saw a data point somewhere that took two sets of founders. One founder was in a relationship, had a better half. Another founder did not. And I think the data was that a founder that's in a relationship performs most cases, as long as they have all the right characteristics, better than someone else in a relationship, without a relationship.
Really?
Yeah. Because the person in a relationship, end of the day, always has at the end of the day, always has someone to come home to and share. And
the loneliness.
Exactly.
Yeah. I do think that, like, at least what I'm seeing is that there's also a set of people. It's very individual. Like, there is a set of people who just want to be like unbounded in some stuff. Just not exactly me. Yeah.
Would you do it again?
Time would tell. I think there is a certain excitement and certain charm and certain value that now, and we're doing great things in Okta. I'm really happy by the work we're doing, there is a certain level of ownership, and that's mine. That's slightly easier, especially as the CEO. But yeah.
Is it hard reporting to somebody now?
No, actually, no. Like, as a CEO, maybe you don't have a manager, but everyone's telling you what to do. And like the amount of actual, like, there are a lot of constraints as a CEO, a lot. Employees, investors, customers, like everyone needs something that constrain. Now I have a wonderful manager. I'm learning a lot from him. I think that's part of why I really enjoy my role. I'm learning a lot from him about mostly communication and strategic thinking in big organizations. So what I'm doing now, just to give you more context, is I'm leading the Spera group. That's one product. And I also got a PAM, a different product in Okta, a different category. The two products are relatively early in their life, which is the similarity, except that there is nothing similar. Like one is Israeli led, the second is US based led. One is like a startup here, the second one is a corporate led. The reporting structure in Spera is one thing, the reporting structure in the other group is different. So I'm seeing a lot of variance and differences. It actually helps me, I feel like, be like even a better manager for Spera, for both, but just seeing the contrast between the two. And I think that one of the things I'm seeing now in the corporate is that you need to make big bets. Like things are slightly slower, at least in a good way, but at the most slightly slower. And so we need to make big bets. And I feel like today part of my excitement about what I'm doing and the learning, the impact is really there, and that's why I'm kind of like really sucking it all in. Also, I think there is another aspect where Spera is my baby, and I really want to see it go through the best way possible in Okta, even for myself more than for anyone else. Yeah.
That's a very important part, because a lot of times, usually most companies that get acquired, as we've seen recently, a lot of them get sunsetted.
Yeah.
And so,
and I think it's not only the initial alignment, but also the culture of what you're building. I think that it's very easy to get to a very negative mentality of us versus they. It was so good here before we need to ask for PTO in Workday, like those kinds of things. And I think it really requires a culture of the acquired company, and a testament to the acquired company. Once you get hit by something that you didn't like, that wasn't like it, do you see the potential pros and potential like opportunity that you're now part of, or are you settling into whatever you couldn't accomplish?
Yeah. What are some of the new goals you're currently working on in your life?
I just had a daughter.
Wow.
Which is we had our first, Daphna. She's 6 months old today.
That's out
this week, and I think people told me it's going to be a big change in my life. It's even bigger than I expected, and my goal is to, I think it's one of those things that the family cell is really forming, and we want to form it in the best way possible.
Yeah. So does legacy matter to you?
In what way?
In general, anything.
How do you define legacy? Like,
that's a good question. Let me rephrase it then differently. What do you want to be remembered for by your daughter?
I don't, to be honest. I think that it's also about leadership. I think in general, I think a lot of, and I get it, I don't think it's good versus bad, but a lot of leaders want to be remembered for things they did. My intent is that no one will miss me in a good way. Like I took few weeks of time off as my daughter was born, and I just had like a coffee chat this morning with one of our employees in Israel, and he told me, we didn't really felt like you like a material change when you were gone. And that's like the best thing he could have told me in my eyes. So I think obviously I want the acquisition of Spera to be successful. I want Okta to have more and more people in Israel. Like there are so many good examples of Microsoft, Proofpoint, so on and so forth, who really came to Israel and leveraged it in a ways that they were like, our goal, and the CEO says it, is to get to hundreds of people in Israel in a few years. And I think that the success of Spera is material for that goal. The success of Spera in Okta, that's what we're now, the chapter we're writing in the book. I would love it to be successful. I think that I'm just part of it. And it's not that important for me to be remembered for that, more so that the outcome.
Right. What do you want your last message to be to everyone listening?
I think the main thing is that being very critical about what you want to do, why, risk-reward curves in your life, and sometimes the risk is gonna happen, but it's fine. So I think there is a level of rationality in the decisions that founders are making, risks they're taking. It's a constant risk-taking game, gut instinct, trusting the gut instinct, those kinds of things. And I think that it's just like a very, it's a very decision-driven field, and let's go with it. It's not going to change. You're going to make some mistakes. It's good. Yeah.
Mistakes are just part of the process.
Yeah.
Hey, wow. I just have to ask you one more thing that just popped in my head right now. Is there something that you feel to you is not work, but to everyone else is work?
Sorry,
is there something that you do that to you it's not work, but to everyone else it feels like work?
I really love messaging. It's very work oriented.
Okay.
Yeah. I have two examples. Let's do it this way. One is at work. Messaging and crafting the right message that will convey the right emotions, feelings, and to make your just idea to cross is something that I just can't get enough of.
Okay.
Love it very often. I kind of text friends who are posting stuff on LinkedIn. I think that if you would make those tweaks, that would be even stronger, so on and so forth. And I really love your posts because of that. The other thing, which is a bit more on the personal side, is dishwashers. I in the last 10 years in Tel Aviv, I didn't have a dishwasher. And now I have a dishwasher. In the US, dishwasher is essentials. It's I don't have a door. So you have a dishwasher. Loading the dishwasher is giving me an intensive amount of joy, and how it goes clean on the other side the following morning. My friends are actually laughing at me. We're at this level. For example, in those Friday night dinners, I'm the person who's loading the dishes for 15 people every Friday, and I'm not going to give up on it.
Wow. I still enjoy dishwashing because it's a certain zen and therapy that comes when I do it, but I'm sure I'll get that stage soon when we have more dishes. I'm going to want a dishwasher.
Yeah.
Wow. Dor, this was amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed this. And I want to thank you for being vulnerable, sharing your story, opening up, trusting me to share with the audience. And there's a lot of different nuggets that I personally took out. And I'm obviously going to listen to this again and again and again to really internalize it, because that's the way I really get to it. But the overall arching feeling that I feel right now and take out is, one is, don't be afraid to pursue the truth and always trust your gut. For some reason, that's what the theme that's coming up in my head right now. Like, trust your gut. If you have something, go through it all the way to the end and push through it. Stand up for it. Go do it. The other thing that really strikes me, I think it's very special, and we didn't get a chance to touch upon it very much, is your humility, which I think is also very unique and special, which I think that no matter what the success and outcome you have in life, you always have to be humble. And that really resonates through you, and I can feel it and I see it. So that's another thing I took a lot. So I want to thank you very, very much.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you for the great content and the great work you're doing with founders. I think it's really good for our entire industry. And yeah, excited about what's next.
You're welcome. Me too. Thank you. My dear friend, thank you so much for listening to this conversation with Dor. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and you took something out from Dor's wisdom and his insight, and you're able to apply it to your personal or professional life today. If you did enjoy it, please send myself or Dor a note what you enjoyed most, what you took out of it. And also, if you have any suggestions or feedback for myself, please let me know how we can take Founder StorieZ podcast to the next level. So that way we can interview incredible founders and the most amazing guests, so we are able to bring you the most benefit. Now, before you go, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review, because when you do that, another person will be able to see this podcast, and they'll also be able to benefit from all the wisdom of the incredible people that we have the opportunity to interview. Now, I hope to see you back very soon with a brand new episode.